Welcome to this edition of the Sacred Hoops podcast on YouTube. My name's Lee Palmer with Sacred Hoops Basketball. Again, I'm joined by Coach Alan Bertram and player development coach Brendan Boomsma of Sacred Hoops, both of you. So, gentlemen, again, welcome this week to another podcast here on Sacred Hoops.
Big shout out to Big Sioux Media for everything that they do. I know we've talked about it in previous podcasts, but without their help and their ability to help us, these podcasts would not take place. And I just appreciate all the work that Big Sioux does to help cover high school athletes all throughout eastern South Dakota.
And we also want to give a shout out to one of our local supporters, and that this podcast is Dairy Queen in Pierre and Cheyenne Eagle Butte, and all of Lonnie Heyer's locations across the state of South Dakota. Lonnie, a big proponent of Sacred Hoops, and we can't do things like this without his support as well. So if you're ever in those areas, stop in at Dairy Queen. I know he treated us right here a few weeks ago when we were out in Pierre working out. We want to thank Lonnie and his crew for helping us out.
Yeah, and I'll say also he's got stores in Vermilion, Martin, and Winter. And one thing about Lonnie is just the fact that you talk about a service-first guy. He does more for the communities in which his stores are located than any other business owner that I know personally. It's amazing what he does. And again, you talk about a leader who leads by example every single day for his employees and for the people in the communities that he serves. We need more Lonnie Heyers in this world. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Today's topic, we're going to talk about the mental approach to getting ready for basketball or while you're working out for basketball. So, Coach, I want to start with you, too. So let's talk about the mental approaches as we're about a month and a half away from the start of practices. Where should coaches be, whether it's you're coaching a third-grade team or you're coaching high school varsity team, where are we at mentally approaching right now?
Well, it's all about preparation. I think the most important part of anything you do in life is about making sure you're fully prepared to be able to do what you're supposed to do. And so the first part comes down to you have to have a full analysis of where you feel your team is at. What are your strengths and your weaknesses? What parts of the game are you going to be able to do and do well? And what are the parts of the area or areas of the game that you're going to have to be able to hide a little bit? And so everything that you do schematic-wise, offensively and defensively, needs to be geared toward your strengths. And you need to be able to hide some of those weaknesses as much as you can schematically. I think one of the biggest mistakes most coaches make is they have a cookie-cutter program every year that they expect kids to fit into. When in all reality, what you need to do is you need to formulate your program based around what your kids' strengths and weaknesses are. So the first part of mental approach for your coaches is making sure that you fully are understanding of what your kids are capable of doing, and then putting a system together that gives them the best chance to be successful. The second part of the mental approach for the game is making sure that all your assistant coaches and your people within your program are all bought in and understand what their roles are and what they're going to be able to do. And in order to do that, again, you have to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. I don't want a coach who has very little background, for example, in man-to-man defense, trying to teach my kids how to play man-to-man defense. I want them to learn and grow from me before they do those things. And so you have to know your personnel, and then whatever their strengths are, you have to allow them to have the ownership to do what they do really, really well. So I think this time of the year right now, it's fully analyzing what your system is going to be like. Your mental approach changes as the season gets closer and as it gets going.
I want to bring up, because there's a lot of new coaches and a lot of young coaches that are getting their first real opportunity here on a varsity level. Both of you guys have coached at higher levels. What is something the best advice you can give a new coach here getting mentally prepared for their first season?
Well, and I'll go first and let Boom, but the most important thing that you can do as a young coach is keep it very simple. You're going to go in with a million ideas and a million thoughts, and you're going to be super excited. And then what you're going to do is you're going to overdo. You're going to try to put too much stuff in, and it's that whole adage of a jack of all trades but a master of none. Really make sure you're really good at a couple simple things, and then if you're going to do that, it allows you to be the most successful down the road. Focus on things you can control. You're not going to be able to control how many points you score. Those things are different factors. but you can make sure you can control how good of a defensive basketball team you are and how well you rebound and those type of things, because those are built on all intangibles that you control from a coaching standpoint and from an athlete standpoint. So focus on those things, but don't overkill things. Keep it really simple.
Yeah, my thing would be, understand you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make a call at the end of a game that might lose a game, but don't beat yourself over it. I've been there, Coach, you've been there before. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't help the players at all either, because that affects the whole thing. So bring a lot of energy. Give trust in your players. This is your first year, right? You talked about your young coach, the first year in your program. Give trust to your players, right? They want to have a great time. There's going to be seniors in that, in that school or program that's their last year. So make it fun for them. Bring a lot of energy, and like I said, don't overemphasize your mistakes.
Yes.
Because the thing you do that, then things will blow up in your face, and it'll be downhill.
Yeah, I agree. Good point.
What we really want to focus on here, though, is, we tell kids all the time that, you got to be mentally tough and mentally focused and all this stuff. But it's more than just game day being prepared for that. So let's talk about, first of all, when a kid walks into a workout, for example, what are you looking for mentally from a kid when, as a player development director, what are you looking for when a kid walks in mentally into that first workout or into their 10th workout? Yeah,
the biggest thing, we just talked about it now, confidence is key, right? So what can they get out of that workout that's going to bring them confidence? And what comes with that is a plan, having a plan, right? Everyone I work out with, I have a plan for them. Like, I know who they are. I'm like, okay, I want to get this done. I want to get this done. And then I give it to them. What do they want to work on, right? It can't just be one of those things where they're getting in the gym and then getting 50 shots, not gaining speed, and then getting out of the gym. You're not going to build confidence that way, right? And the mental health and the mental, approach to that won't be great, So if they don't have a plan, their mental approach won't be great with that. Therefore, their mental health will be, oh, crap, right? So how can they approach a workout that helps them gain confidence? Okay, so I always planned it, and you always did it with me too. How can we work on 30 minutes of things that are going to work on my strengths so I feel good about it, but then my last 15 minutes or 30 minutes are all weaknesses, right? Because what's going to happen is that 30 minutes of works on your strength stuff, you're, okay, I'm feeling good. Then you work on your weaknesses, right? And it's, okay, those are things I need to work on, but it brings you back a light where it's like, okay, I just got a full hour workout in, doing everything I needed to possibly do to gain confidence in what I need to get prep into the season.
I agree, and I think one of the biggest things that Boom is talking about right now too is the fact that it's part of being it's self-reflection as a player. So like when I work out a kid, one of the first two questions that I ask a kid the first time I work with them is, what are your biggest strengths as a player, do you feel? And then the next question is, what do you think are your biggest weaknesses? And 90% of the time, the biggest weaknesses are going to be very general, non-specific answers. Ball handling, shooting. Okay, well, there's a million aspects to both those things. So for you really to get better, we're going to have to learn how to get a lot more specific. And so when you get done getting, when you're working with the kid, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to get them to approach things mentally so that things become more specific if they want to be better. And you have to get used to talking and discussing about the areas of needed improvement.
Yeah.
So that's how you grow. Like, to be honest with you, you can do a million things, but if all you're doing in the gym is working on things you're already good at, you're never going to get better. So you have to make sure you're working on those areas. So you understanding as a player, okay, my mental approach is these are the very specific things that I know I got to get better at. How am I going to work on those things today to make sure I'm getting better? That's one part of the mental approach. The second part is then analyzing when you get done, where I do good, when I do bad. And then always analyzing, okay, what was my effort level? We talk about this a lot with our kids, like it's one thing to be able to do. I see kids all the time that are super skilled, but their effort level sucks. Well, I don't want you to play for me. I don't care what you can do with the basketball. If your effort level sucks, we're never going to win anything big with you. So you have to understand that there's certain things when it comes to that too that's approachable. I think we talk about with our kids all the time, and this is old school, but having that basketball journal, having that basketball notebook, we have electronics all over the place, putting it on there, but having that diary of every day, these are my areas of needed improvement. This is what I did today. How did I feel today? What am I going to do tomorrow to make sure I'm better? Those things, when you can mentally think, write, and see, it starts to become who you are. And I think sometimes we've gotten away from that in today's society. But when I think about mental approach, mental health, all those things, that to me is something that is not done enough by our athletes. That self-reflection piece, the goal-setting piece, and having it down so every day they have it where they can locate it and see it.
I'm going to add a piece to it too here. So as a player, you're going into a workout. I want that trainer or that coach to do things that are going to emulate what my program does at school.
Yes.
Right? So I see a lot of, kids doing workouts where it doesn't even, they're not going to do 13 dribbles in a game at their program, right? So I think the process of doing it after the season, right, April to about August, you're doing as much skill work as you can.
Yep.
Right, trying to get better, all that stuff. Then about 1 to 2 months before the season, start doing things that are offensively in your system.
Yep.
Right, and I'm going to give Lee some hype right now because last year I worked with his son Sam, and all I did was drifts, lifts, flare screens off threes, and he had a heck of a year last year because we emulated everything he did in his system with Kobe there, right? So, players, if your trainer or coach isn't asking you what you're doing, you better call them out and say, hey, coach, you need to reach out to my head coach and ask, what am I going to be involved in? Because the worst thing you want is a player to do 13 step backs or 10 dribbles and then get into their system and their head coach is like, what did they do all summer with Coach Boomsma? I don't. And then it looks bad on me. Like, so when you first get a player, like you said, strengths, weaknesses, but how does your coach put you in the game?
Yes.
And luckily we are very advanced we know a lot of coaches. We watch a lot of basketball, so we usually know what they what the systems are. But I think that's a huge key to that.
I would agree, and I think don't be the social media warrior where you look cool because you're working on some hardened side steps into a 3-point shot. When if you do that for me, and we're trying to win a high school basketball game, your butt's gonna be watching, And so understand that. I mean, training's great, but having specific training that's actually going to be things that you're going to utilize in a game within what you're trying to do within your scope of your team. We've talked about this culture and programs and all that stuff. It's about being able to be efficient. I hope some of our kids have watched the NBA games the last 2 days. We've had some people who have been really, really good, and we've had some athletes who've not been so good. And one of the biggest things I always say is the number one mark of a great player is their actual efficiency rating. Like, to score 25 points on 25 shots to me is, who cares? Anybody can do that, to be real truthful with you. But when you're scoring 28 on 15 shots, that's a whole nother level. And I'll show you every single time, the higher the efficiency rating of the best player on the floor, the number of wins for that team is out the roof. And so it's really important about doing things right, keeping it simple, and then making sure you're executing. You can execute better when you're keeping it simple. If you don't believe me, ask Jason Tatum out there the other day. It wasn't good.
And you bring this up, being specific. One of the best things that I think that our program does is we could have 15 kids in the gym, and you can have 15 kids doing 15 different things that they're working on, because not all of them need certain things. For example, you're not going to have a 7-foot, 280-pound kid. We're not going to stand him out at the 3-point line and have him sit on a gun and shoot threes all day, or sitting there doing ball handling drills, that they're not going to ever use. Instead, we're putting them on the block and having them work out that way. And I think part of that, too, is being mentally prepared to know what your role is, to know that, you might not be the 3-point shooter. You might not be the slash and cutter. You might not be the top player on that team. You brought up St. Mary's earlier. I think of Max Herber out of that. He took a huge step back and had to take a mental approach for that when Ashawn came in. So when we talk about just mental preparedness, workouts, now we're getting ready to prepared for the season. What are some pointers that you have for students right now?
Yeah, like I said, doing things that emulate their system. That's going to give them the most confidence, right? They get in the first practice and coach says, we're driving elbow and we're kicking out to a drift in the corner, and they've done that rep 1,000 times. How confident are you going to be in that? A ton. So that's really the approach you have to take, and take another level. Now I think maybe a 1%er of South Dakota athletes are like this, but take another level where they're taking dudes who got All-State above them last year, right? Find other ways to mentally prepare and mentally think like, I'm going to beat these guys.
Yeah.
Right? It's all mentality. It's like Kobe Mama mentality system, right? So, but I said the 1% of kids actually do that stuff. And I personally know people that, printed off people or teams that beat them or they picked them over them, and they're like, hey, we're going to cross these guys off. Right? And that's a whole other ballgame to it, but that's a way that's what separates the decent players to the dudes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, by far.
So that's a great way to do it, and take care of your body, nutrition wise, get in the weight room, stretching, find a way to prepare and mentally approach to things that aren't just basketball related.
Yeah.
Right? Take care of the classroom,
Yep.
so you don't have to worry about grades so much during the season. Watch film, study, nutrition wise, take care of your body. Just do things that you're going to get the first day of practice. You're so ready to go. It's not even
Well, and what happens to us as adults? Like we don't function well when we're under stress. The more stress we have, the more it affects our personal lives, our business lives, whatever, right? So it's no different for our young people. If you're approaching things right in the classroom, if you're taking care of your body, you're doing those things, you have less problems. And so when you don't carry stress over to the basketball court or to the team, you're able to function at a much higher level. So that's why when I think kids have a hard time understanding, but when we talk about being a student athlete and doing all these other things off the court that are so important, they are because they're important. But second of all, it makes your job easier because it does take away that stress level. And it allows you to focus on what your job is. The mental approach is about being able to mentally focus, right? And it's hard to focus on something when you got 8 million other things going on. And I think sometimes, especially in some of our communities over here, they don't know how good they have it. I know what it's like for a lot of my fellow coaches in other areas where their kids are. It's a tough go, and so for them to be able to focus on just basketball is a difficult thing. So I think having that ability to do that is important. But like Boom said, I think it's sometimes taking care of things other than basketball allows you to focus on basketball even more.
I think it's being able to check the outside world at the gym door when you walk in as well. You talked about stresses and things like that. For kids to be able to just say, you know what, for this 1 hour, it's basketball. I don't have to worry about what's going on. And when you take the sneakers off and put the other shoes on, then it's time to focus on that. With that said, we would like to wrap this up. We'd like to thank you for watching us. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Look for our articles on Facebook. Look for our podcasts on YouTube. Thank you again for joining us. This is Lee Palmer for Sacred Hoops Basketball.